All right, so today we're going to walk through Meshmixer. I already have it downloaded and opened on my computer. It looks like this icon. It's Mac and PC, so you can download it and install it. So what I've already done is downloaded the 3D files, which you will find in your Moodle site. So I can either start here with import or just go up to file and I can say import. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually import both of the files for the upper and lower part of the beak. So we're starting with a file that is a beak, so this is an improvement from the last time we ran this, which was a little bit harder. So we're going to select both the lower and the front. I'm just holding down the command key on my Mac to select both at the same time. You can also add one in and then you can import the other one later. So I could come in and I could say import and it'll ask if I want to append, meaning that do I want to add to it or replace it. So if you did the imports one at a time, you still could get the same thing. Now obviously this is not particularly helpful for me in the way that it looks right now. So the lower jaw it did put on the plane and the upper one is a little bit skewed. So here's our object browser, so I can select which one I want to be working on. So the lighter colored one is going to be the one that is essentially editable at that moment. So I'm going to go to the front part, the upper beak, and then what I can do is I can come into a couple tools. So I'm going to introduce you to the tools as I work with them because I find that to be the easiest way. Under Edit, we have one called Transform, and what that allows me to do is I get these tools which allow me to turn and reposition. So I'm just going to pull this up so I can actually see it first, and then I can move it around. If I keep my cursor really close to the inner portion of this, it does allow it to be a little bit more precise, and the farther I come out. So about this point is where it gets to just go in 5-degree increments. So I'm going to change that so I can get it to 180 degrees. I can then move this back a little bit. And then I could go to the lower jaw. I can hit transform on that as well, and then I can move that back. Now this does not look like the orientation that I really need when I'm trying to, so what we're going to try to do is we're going to try to angle it so it is how the beak would actually go together. So as you are contouring one side, it would then match the contour of the other. So it does start off with a beak, but it doesn't mean that this is actually accurate in how you would normally see a beak function. So you can look, see if it's somewhat in the right position. If not, I could move this down a little bit, move it over a little bit, but then also look at the side. I can see that, so it does have these holes, and as long as they're mostly aligned, then that's where the jaw is obviously going to hinge. And I could come in here and continue to edit this, but once you have it kind of in the right orientation, these won't actually move. So you can, all right, that looks pretty good. Now I'm going to hit accept on that. So now I have them both here, and again, I can select either one that I want to be working on. And what I want to do is I want to select each one, and then under under Sculpt is a couple options we're going to go through in a second. But the first thing we always want to do is we want to hit Symmetry. And what it's going to do is going to see that this is a symmetrical piece, and it's going to drop a line right down the center. So what this allows is something very convenient, is that I can edit one side and it will mirror it on the other. So then I'm going to select the other one, and I'm going to go select, and I'm also going to put, and that actually puts symmetry on both. So it only shows the symmetrical line when you have one selected, but symmetry. So there we have. So it shows the symmetrical line when we're in the sculpt option itself. Now, although I do have this, so I have everything lined up, it is going to make it a little bit harder to really manipulate one side at a time. So we have our objects browser, and if for any reason you close this out, you can always find it again by clicking show objects browser, and it'll show the two different objects that we have in here. Also, if you shrunk this a little bit, sometimes you lose the eyeballs on the side, which you do need at this point, so you can always just open this back up again. But what it allows you to do is it allows you to hide something. And so if I have this hidden and selected, it gives you kind of like a ghost image, but I could then hide the lower jaw, only show the upper jaw, upper beak, and then I can see all the contours of the underside, and so then I can start manipulating just one of these. So again, I can go into Sculpt. I've already added that symmetry line, and so I'm just going to go through some of the tools. There are a lot of tools, and you can play around with other ones if you feel like it, but these are the ones that I feel are going to be the most useful for you in making your beak function. So what's nice is we are starting with the beak, so you know, it's contoured and thin, but it doesn't necessarily match what you need it to do. And so what we can do here is we can start with drag. And so what drag does is it's very much like sculpting, and that's what this program really does. So you can sort of pull different points in it. Now, one of the things you want to work with here is sort of adjusting the strength and the size. So if I, you know, made this size very big, then I can pull and make the beak much thicker or elongate certain portions. The thing that happens though is that it also, you know, it's taking more mass at the same time. So you don't have a very refined option when you have it that large. The opposite side though is that sometimes if I keep moving, I can make little divots, and we really don't want that. So after a while that can be somewhat problematic on when we're printing. So you can just undo. So one handy thing to know is that, I mean, I can come up and I can say actions undo, but you can see here it says that it's Command and Z on a Mac, or it's Control and Z on a PC. So if I made a mistake, I'm playing around and I realized that I really didn't want something to happen, or it did, you know, it went too far, like I did that, I really didn't want it. So I can Command Z and then I can take it back and you know, get it back to the point. I'm like, okay, that looks good. Let me start back over again. So I don't have to redo everything, but I can just make some modifications. I'm moving this around. You can move it around with your scroll wheel if you have a mouse, but I'm also just holding down the Control key and then moving with my my mouse pad here. You can also use this to maneuver as well. So the little guide box up in the upper right hand corner. So at this point, you know, I can look around, and it does sort of make a difference as to what orientation you're doing, or you're looking at, depending on how you are using that drag function. So obviously this is what we don't want to do, but if I was looking at it from a different angle and pulling in the same direction, obviously it makes a completely different movement and change to the sculpt that we're working on. So that's using drag. So that really allows you to sculpt and pull, and then draw. There are two different draw options. There's a draw 1 with the 1 plus, and then there's draw 2. And what that allows you to do is just by clicking on it, it's kind of adding mass to it. So I'm not really drawing much, but if I do pull the mouse out, it's not drawing and dragging the way it had before, but it's actually just making it thicker. So if parts of your beak require thickness and other parts require it to be a much thinner, more contoured, you can, you know, work on that. So at this point, you know, by just clicking through here, and again, I could up the size, and then it would add much more mass as I go along. And then I could try draw 2, see what that does. So you can see how it's growing here. So it is pulling in some more space. So if you want to add a lot of mass at once, you can play around with this function. If for some reason you don't want these holes or anything, because it did come from a pre-defined file. So at this point, you know, parts of this are very thick, parts of it are very thin. You can make some adjustments here. there are some other options that will then smooth things out. So although I put the mass in, it did make it a little bit softer and everything. But as I, if I wanted to, I could come back here and I could, drag again. Let me pull this back a little bit. Oops, that's silly. I made it too small. So you see when I take it down in size and strength a little bit, it doesn't actually do what I want it to do. And yes. So now I have this sort of random addition, which I don't really want to keep, but I'm just going to show, there's two different options here for smoothing things out. There's something called Bubble Smooth, which will again keep the mass, so it's not really removing very much mass, but it's smoothing out the shapes a little bit. So again, like you saw those extra kind of curves and everything, and this is just smoothing that out. The other one we have here is Shrink Smooth, and this will actually remove mass. So it's softening everything, but it's also really taking it back. So if I made too many, I used the drag function too much, and I just pulled it out too far, but I also got a lot of the shape that I wanted, and I don't want to do the Command Z, undo function. I can use the Shrink Smooth, and again, adjusting how much of that I really want it to use. So that will start smoothing some things out. The last one that I'll show here is also, actually maybe not the last one, but there's one called Pinch. So especially on the edges here, it could be that you really want this to contour down a bit more, so it does have more of an edge. So you might want to play around with that a little bit, after you really have it shaped the way you want, but maybe you added a little bit extra thickness. You can play around with that and see how it shrinks that back a little bit. So as you can see, we're getting there. There is one other option. I don't think it's going to come in very handy on this, but there is a flatten, and that will take a certain portion of an area and then really flatten it out. So you see that it does that here. So if you needed for some reason more of a flatter surface, now it's still doing some weird contouring, but you might want to play around with that one as well. So I could again just Command Z that if I didn't want to keep it. Okay, so now that we have this somewhat contoured, we've done some manipulation to it, what we can do is we can look at the other one in conjunction with it. So I've really pulled this beak down, so although I did have this pretty lined up initially, now it doesn't work so well, and I can't really see necessarily how it's functioning next to each other. So I can go back here and I can do transform again. I could leave it like that, sort of angle it, but let's see. Okay. So we'll just keep it like this for right now. And now I can start manipulating the other side. So I may not want to fully hide the upper beak so I can see a little bit, but I could come in here and I could sculpt, drag that again. Again, my symmetry is already on. We want to make sure that, yes, it has a symmetrical line, but I could start pulling the lower jaw up and seeing if I can match that. Pull that back. So again, we might want to play around with the size. Should I make this a little bit smaller? And manipulate this as I go along to see if I can get it to match the contour. And again, we want to look around so we can see that it's not, that there's a bit of a gap here. Is that something that's intentional? So it depends on what you're working on for your beak. Picking up seeds, cracking seeds, tearing flesh. Is there a way that you're looking at this particular view to see how it matches and how it would help the creature, or would it prevent them from doing what they need to do? So you can again use these tools to see. think that actually works very well. But yeah, so I can't tell you exactly how everything is going to work best for your particular beak, but playing around with the tools and moving around some of the mass here, so then I could you know, hide the other side and see what it's, you know, making sure that it's also doing what I want on the contour of the jaw itself. So you're going to be playing around with showing and hiding the upper and lower jaw, using the different tools, manipulating it, trying to make sure that they do connect together. You will then be able to have these printed and have them connected either so that they, you know, hinge directly and don't have that movement, or you could have it so that maybe it has a rubber band here so that this lower jaw could move up and down and be able to maybe crack seeds or things. So there are some, the print itself will come out in plastic, and you have to think about that, you know, the plastic has a certain strength and stability, and that can't be adjusted. So so there, you're going to have some, you know, barriers or things that you'll have to deal with, and understanding the expectations of how this particular, you know, interpretation of a beak will work. I'm going to show you a couple more things. One very important thing that I didn't bring up yet is that you should be saving often. So you are going to want to save continually so that you don't lose the work that you have started with. Also, at some point, if you are happy with your file, you can save it, and then you could keep working and then do a save as. So if you wanted to have 2 interpretations of it, maybe you wanted to try some things, but you didn't want to lose the work that you had done before, just know that you can always do, like, you know, bird beak, Landis bird beak file 1, something like that. Also, it's also very ideal for you to put your last name into the file itself, because as you're submitting these to your professor, he will not necessarily know that bird beak 1 is yours, since everyone has maybe a bird beak 1. One other thing that may not be completely usable all the time, but there's something called a plane cut. Let me just go back here again. It's under Edit. So if you had manipulated something and you needed to just get rid of a large portion, or maybe we just want to remove part of this face, I can do a plane cut on this guy. So what it allows you to do is it allows you to basically delete an entire portion of something. So at this point, I want to delete an entire portion of this upper beak. I could say discard half, and the white half is what's going to remain, and the other part is going to be deleted. So if I hit delete on that, now I have removed that entire portion. I actually think that I accidentally... I did. So I accidentally removed the other portion when I had the other side open. So I can just do undo, undo, go a couple back, one more. Right. So now my whole beak is there. And I can simply come back in here. So I can remove all of that if I needed to. Generally, I don't think you're going to have to use that too much, but the plane cut under Edit is available. When you are completely finished, like I said, you're going to be saving repeatedly. You can do this. You can hide one of your models, and then you can export. And so that will export just that particular file. So I can say Landis upper beak. And then I can do the opposite. Oops. So I'm going to do export, and we can just export it as an object file. So I can call Landis lower beak. And then I can save there. So now I have these 2 files. I can submit them for printing or just to send along so that I can see your file. If you wanted to, you know, just send the Meshmixer file so I can actually come in and look at your work as well, that's fine, but you can just send the object files as well. if you have any questions, obviously I'm here for you. This is just to get you started, but this will walk you through hopefully most of the tools that you'll need, but you're welcome to play around and test some things out. Just always remember that the undo function is your helper and your friend, and we will work together through this semester to get you some very interesting beaks printed.